Dr. Annie Cole, I am so excited to have you on, and I cannot wait to talk to you because let's face it, money is a big deal, and making that shift from into entrepreneurship, money is usually the biggest stressor, concern, and you're going to just share all the knowledge today so that by the end of this episode, we're going to know how to make that shift and what that transition looks like. And we're going to feel a lot more at peace. If we're right in that transformational time, you're going to make us feel really good. So thank you so much for coming on the show today. I am so excited to talk to you about this.
Yeah, it's such an important topic. And I know when I was thinking about transitioning out of my full-time career into entrepreneurship, I was thinking about it. I might have a background and be a financial coach, but that doesn't mean it wasn't scary for me. So just really happy to share some tips with people because I know it can be a really difficult thing.
It absolutely can. And I'll share a little piece of my story a little bit later. But first, I want to hear about you because you were working in a career and you made this decision to move into entrepreneurship. How did that happen?
It actually happened by accident. So
I think everybody's
I
does, honestly.
I know, right? It's so funny how it happened because Uh, what really happened was my husband and I were away on a Christmas vacation and we were sitting there in this tropical place feeling very relaxed. And we usually both work a ton. So we were sitting there saying one of us should maybe take a break or both of us should take a break. And I said, I feel like I'm ready to make some sort of a transition. I had been working at an ed tech company. I'd been promoted into a vice president role, had a lot of leadership responsibilities, was working a ton, and it just felt like it was the right time to back off a little bit. So my intention actually, when I came back in the new year, I spoke with the CEO and said, I'd love to go part-time. And I honestly thought I'll just go part-time. But the craziest thing happened, and I wonder if this happens for other people. I took a step back and gave myself permission to take a break from full-time work. And suddenly I reconnected with all of these passions inside of me, including finances and personal finances, specifically for women and helping them know how to make the most of their money. So from there, I decided to launch my financial coaching business, and a whole lot has happened since then. But yeah, that step was very much a surprise to me and to other people.
So did something happen when you decided that, okay, I'm going to go part-time and like you connected with all your passions and you're like, all right, I'm going to do this. Was it still scary in that moment when you made that decision for you?
Oh, yes, very scary. And I didn't know what I was going to do. I actually think one thing that I gave myself permission to do internally, I never said in the beginning, I'm starting a business. I said,
Mm.
I want to try coaching women to help them with their finances. So I just started posting information on social media. I didn't have a website at first. I was just getting information out there and honestly thought maybe I'll just do this as a free activity to promote financial education. And then it turned into coaching and other pieces. But yeah, it was scary in the beginning and it wasn't what it turned out to be. It kind of evolved over time.
When that was all happening, um, you know, how did you know? Like, how long did it take from the time you're like, I think I'm gonna coach women and it's not really a business. But when did it turn into a business?
It turned into a business when I was working with a coach online. I decided to work with a business coach to figure out what it would take to actually start promoting and marketing my business. And they spoke about how important it is to have credibility early on. And because I don't have a background in finance, I thought that I need to figure out some ways to give myself some credibility. So one of the things they suggested was to write a book. So I already had wanted to write a book. I had all these ideas about what I wanted to share. So I actually sat down and wrote the book and published it all within 2 months. It was just this wild
Oh my
turnaround process.
gosh.
So yes, it was wild. I wrote it, I published it. And then once it was published, that's when the business felt real because in order
Mm.
to start taking in money from my book and other things, I set up my LLC and it officially was like, okay, I'm going forward. I have a book, I have coaching. I'm going to expand it to even more things. So it really grew from there.
I love that because I get that. For a while when I first started my business, I I didn't realize it was a business. And even in the beginning, when I would say I owned a business, I was like, it seemed fake. I'm like, okay, it doesn't really feel like I'm a business owner. Like it still feels like it's a hobby, but it's a real business that you pay taxes on and it supports you and everything, but it felt so fake.
Yeah.
Like, no, it's really not. So
Yeah.
when you're working with people, or from your experience, people are sometimes afraid to make that leap and to leave their career and to start entrepreneurship. I know I hear it a lot. It's like, yes, I want to
Yeah.
do this, but, but, how do you take that leap?
I highly suggest. I know a lot of people who have just quit their job cold turkey and jumped into it, but I actually highly suggest that you don't do that, if at all possible. And that's my biased experience. So what I did, as I've shared in the story, I went part time and I had income coming in from my employer, and I was able to stay connected to that community, have some support as an employee part time while also building out my business. So that took the financial pressure off of me, which was so, so needed, because I think unfortunately there's a lot of things you do when you need money that aren't very authentic. So you might start being very salesy or doing things that feel outside your comfort zone to make money. So having income from my job is allowing me to create my business and build my business in a really authentic, healthy way, which has been good. The other reason I would say this, and I don't know if you experience this, when you jump into entrepreneurship, you might actually hate it. I know lots of people, will be on social media saying having a job is horrible. I want freedom. Having a business is also really hard, and it's not easy to just make money right away. So test it out, test the waters in little simple ways and see if you really like it, and then lean into it.
Yeah, so, as you saw me raise my hand, and if you're watching this on YouTube, you saw my hand go up when she said to not just quit your job and dive into it, and that's exactly what I did, and I always follow that up with, I don't recommend doing it. I mean, it did work out for me in the end, but it was
Yeah.
financially hard because I didn't have that safety net. Exactly what you're saying, I didn't have that. I didn't plan, didn't dip my toe in. I just made a decision and did
Yeah.
it. Luckily, I loved it. So I'm still
Yeah.
here, right? But it is hard. And if I could go back and do it again, I would absolutely plan it differently and talk to somebody exactly like you to say, help me figure out how to do this. So let's talk about like that financial planning when you're starting to make that transition. If I'm coming to you and I'm like, Annie, I'm thinking about leaving my job, or I want to start a business, but I don't know if I'm ready. What would you what would you tell me?
I think the first thing I would start with, I do this with most of my clients, whether it's, you just want to pay off debt, you want to start a business, whatever it is. First thing we have to do is start with your budget and creating just a one big picture of what your current finances look like so we know what we're working with. Because if you have $60,000 in a savings account, that's going to be a very nice buffer for you in the meantime if you just quit your job. If you want to keep your job and you can go part time, or you want to pick up a bridge job that's going to pay you just enough to pay your bills, those all could be options. So the first thing we're going to do is lay out all of your expenses, audit those expenses to say, what do you absolutely have to pay for? What could you put off for a while? What could you reduce if needed? Do you feel comfortable living on this minimum amount, or do you want to live a more lavish lifestyle in the meantime? So really getting clear and crunching the numbers on what you need to live on, and then looking at the income. So do we want to take, cold turkey, quit your job? You have enough in savings for 6 months to cover your expenses. We can do that. And then the third piece is going to be looking at the potential business income. So actually creating a plan of, if I charge 150 an hour and I had 6 clients a month, this is how much I might make. And I'm expecting it would take 3 months of runway to even get my first client, those kind of things. So it's taking the actual practical, this is what life looks like, this is what business looks like, putting it into a spreadsheet, crunching the numbers, and then trying to create a plan from there.
Gosh, if I could go back and do that, it would look so different. If I would have come to you back then, you would have been like, "Are you out of your mind? Like, you are not quitting your job." And it's it's kind of funny because my coworkers from back then, after years later, made comments and like, "We thought you lost your mind when you were quitting and said you were going to like just work out of your home. Like, we really thought you were crazy." And since then, ironically, I'm going to say most of them have also taken that leap, not because of me, just whatever is going
Mhm.
on in their lives, which has been kind of cool to see
Yeah.
too. But yes, if I could go back and actually plan it, that would have been so much more comfortable than what I actually went through. When you're working
Yeah.
with a new client and they're starting to plan and they're looking at,
Mm.
okay, you do the worksheet with them to figure out what they currently have and then kind of
Yep.
projecting on what the business looks like it would generate. Are, are they realistic in what they think it'll generate? Because I feel like as a new business owner, you think it's going to generate all this money, like the website's done,
Mm.
everybody's going to pour in, or do you find that people are pretty realistic of the time frame it takes to actually start generating real revenue?
That's a great question. I do think that people, well, I will say, I don't think a lot of people are actually projecting the numbers. I
That's a
think a
good
lot of
point.
people, yeah, I
Very
don't,
good point.
I will honestly say, most of the time when I work with folks and we start plugging things into a spreadsheet, they have not actually plugged anything into a spreadsheet before we've met. So that would just be my guess that people aren't actually projecting. I will also say, I think that there's so much going on in social media, especially this last year when it comes to digital marketing. There's so much being promoted that you can be up and running and have a business in days and you can start making thousands of dollars. I don't I don't know what that looked like over the last 10 years because I haven't so much been following folks that are entrepreneurs, but I just wonder about that because brick and mortar business owners probably didn't imagine, they didn't think the same way that some of the digital entrepreneurs are thinking. So I almost wonder if the media that we're providing to people is convincing them that they'll make money faster than they should. So I don't know. Yeah, I guess those are my thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, that's a good point because I do think that sometimes social media makes it look really easy. A lot of things look really easy, and it's not. It does
Mhm.
take work. When you're working with a new entrepreneur, what are some of the biggest mistakes that you see them make?
I think a lot of people create a product and a service and a website, and they think that that's enough. And they don't lean into the marketing side of things and realize that the marketing is a full-time job. And I'll also say a lot of people do know that, and a lot of people are doing the marketing and they know how much work it takes. But for those that aren't, there is sometimes this idea that once you have a website and you send a couple of emails, you're done and the leads will start flowing in. But it takes a lot of time to build, the trust, also to make sure you actually have the right product and service that people want, if you're targeting the right people, if you're on the right channels, if your messaging is dialed in. There's so much. So I think the marketing piece is probably the biggest learning curve because developing a service can be easy if you're a coach. You can just say, I know how to do this. I would easily be able to jump on a call with you. But then getting the person to actually see you, trust you, and sign on with you is a whole nother deal.
Yeah, gosh, yes. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I see that so much. And it's funny because I teach women how to market their business and I also design websites through my agency. And so many times you nailed it. I hear like there's this misconception like, well, I'm going to just put it out there and the floodgates will open. So much to the point
Yeah.
where I've had people say, well, nobody responded to my ad, to my request, to my, whatever their call to action was. And I'm like, okay,
Yep.
so tell me everywhere that you marketed this and how did you do it? And they're like, well, I posted it on Facebook. Okay, how many times? Once. I'm like, are you out of your mind? Like,
Yes.
you're not going to see it just once. Like, you have to be sick and tired of hearing yourself talk. Like, that's when it's enough. And then do it
Yes.
like 10 more times. So,
Absolutely. You have to almost you become really thick-skinned, I think.
yes.
I've experienced that. I will post things on social media that get no reactions, and I just believe what I put out is powerful and people see it, and I have to wait for people to come in. And then other times I'll post something and get a ton of engagement. Sometimes people will end up on the website or I got someone to sign up and pay in full without ever meeting with me last week. Um, and
Isn't that
that's the
like
kind of
awesome?
stuff that
Yes.
yeah, that's the kind of stuff that happens after you put in the work over and over and over and over again. It's not just posting once, unfortunately. It really is. And I hope that people who want to become entrepreneurs put on that mindset that this isn't just getting one client. Every time you post, you're building a legacy, you're building a business, you're building a brand, you're building something so much bigger. Think about it that way. So every time you post, it's one piece of that work rather than putting so much pressure on the individual post. Because I think we do that too. And then if it flops, we're like, oh, we're a failure. Everybody flops every single day, all the time.
Yes. 100%. Everything you just said. So, what is some advice that you tell those early entrepreneurs? Like, what should they focus on in the beginning? Right after you've worked with them, you kind of figured out that strategy as far as what their budget and their projected budget looks like. Then, what's next?
I think doing your market research is really, really important. So, knowing what you're developing as far as a product or a service, why you're offering that, and who you're offering it to. So, my background is actually in research. Over the past 4 years, I worked for an ed tech company. I was their vice president of research. I did everything from big federal grants all the way down to more user experience type focus groups and interviews. And I actually just ran a focus group a couple weeks ago. It was really fascinating. So I was working with someone who had a startup. He had me run a bunch of participants through a focus group where I showed them pages of the website and they gave feedback on, do I know what this person's selling? Do I like it? Do I have questions? What do I think? And it was such good feedback. It was everything from, I don't really know what this solution will do for me, to the website looks a little bit corny and gives me the feel of a startup. So it doesn't feel like a brand that's well established. And so I think that kind of research early on is so important because that's what's going to make the difference between people coming to you and not trusting you right away, people not understanding your solution, or people falling in love, feeling like you're reading their mind, you're offering them exactly what they need and wanting to work with you right away. So that comes first. And if you jump in too fast and skip that step, you might not know why you're missing out. Like people might not reach out to you, but you don't know if it's the wrong product, the wrong message, or the wrong demographics.
That is so important. And being fully transparent, when I first started, I didn't do my research. I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do, and just kind of threw it together. I mean, it kind of happened by mistake, same as you. Like, not mistake. It's
Yeah.
definitely not a mistake, but by accident. This wasn't something one day I was like, oh, one day when I grow up, this is what I want to do. Like, that didn't happen in my world. It just happened almost organically. But when I started to market myself, there was no research involved in it. It was just what I thought I
Yeah.
knew. And what I learned was that my message was really muddy. It wasn't very clear on what
Mm,
I did. I also didn't know who I was talking to. So, how important is it when you're doing that research? Should you know who your ideal client avatar is before you start doing that research, or do you discover it while you're doing a research on who you really want to target?
actually, you can do both. You can use the market research to figure out beforehand, let's say you want to do personal training online. So you might do some research on personal training companies and then do some online research on who's searching for personal training online, who's paying for it, what are their demographics. And then once you have that group, if you were to study that group or to reach out to them, and I'm also a big believer in giving free testing away of whatever your product or service is. So let's say you have a group of people you think they're your dream client, you have them test your offering, give feedback on it. from that experience, you'll start to know what those people also want and you'll refine it even more. So maybe you find that everyone's saying, I love your app because it makes me not have to plan out my workout of the day. You already laid it out for me. So you know that it's people who are busy and want efficiency. So then that's again going to tweak your messaging even more to be, okay, people who are busy and in this demographic, you have a picture of the person in that demographic, uh, join the app and get fast, efficient 30-minute workouts every single day. So it's just like a funnel. It continues to refine itself.
So how do you find those people to test it?
So there's this amazing website. It's called respondent.io. And you can log in and create a profile as a researcher. You don't have to be an official researcher. You could just be anyone. You set up a profile. They have a database of 3 million people who have signed up to already be in their system and be participants. Plus, they will actively, they have advertisements and they'll recruit to reach out to people that potentially could be a participant. So once you set up your project, you say what you're looking for. I want women in their 50s who are interested in this topic. You create your project, they match you with participants, and then you can run a survey, a focus group, or interviews directly with them. It's so cool.
I have never heard of this. I am like, how did I never come across this in all these years?
It's
I
amazing. Yeah.
I love that you just shared that because so many times we're looking for somebody to kind of test an idea or, and you can only throw it past your circle that's your ideal client, like the small group so many times, right? Before you're
Yeah.
like, they're probably sick of seeing my stuff. I am so checking out this website as soon as
Yes.
we're done, I'm heading over there. So
Yeah, check it out. The other thing I would say for folks, be extremely cautious in overly relying on the feedback of people who are not your dream client. I think that can also give you faulty information sometimes. I was doing some testing with one of my online courses and I sent it out to one of my colleagues and she actually wrote back when she was testing it and said, I'm going to give you the caveat. I don't think I'm your ideal client. So here's my feedback. And I read all of her feedback and it was super clear that she probably would never have bought what I was selling anyway. So keep that in mind because if you're telling the wrong person, they might not be convinced by your messaging, but the right person might absolutely love what you're doing.
yeah, it's funny because I just shared something similar, although I love that you shared this again because I think it's so important. But I was saying sometimes I'll have my husband who has a degree in marketing. He is the furthest thing from my ideal client that that could possibly be. But I'll ask him, I'm like, hey, like, look, I'm making this change on my website or my lead magnet. I'm like, what do you think? And he'll critique it. And I'm like, get away from me. You're not even my lead, my ideal client. I'm like, just get out.
Exactly.
I forget it.
Exactly.
I'm like,
Yeah.
why do I even ask? Because he's going to see it so differently. Like we're
Yeah.
when it comes to this stuff, we're so opposite. So it's kind of funny that you shared that too, because it is important. Because if I took that personal, right, and he may have really good feedback, it may align with what somebody else would say who is my ideal client. But if I take it personal and switch it, he's not who I'm targeting. So what he wants to hear is going to look and
Yeah.
sound completely different, and I can mess things up.
Yeah.
So I love that you share that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So on your journey, right? So you leave your career, you go to part-time, you dip your toe in the water. I think I'm going to do this. Then it turns into this real business. Now you're really helping others make that same transition. When did you know that I'm so glad I did this? Like that you made the right choice?
I knew right when I published my book and I started taking on clients. I think there were two moments. One was working with my first client, and when they would ask me a question about how to make the most of their finances, the first client wanted to talk about investing. I just felt like I could talk for hours about investing. I was so excited about it. I thought this is my passion area and my expertise area. So that felt really aligned, like the flow state that they talk about when you're doing good work. The second thing I would say I noticed right away was that I was waking up in the morning and running to my office. I could not wait to work. And it was because I was so in love with the work I was doing and I really want to make this difference in the world. And that hasn't stopped. So I think that's how I know. There have been other jobs that I've loved, but I can say this feels more aligned than anything else I've ever done. And so that personal feeling, it just feels like it's the right thing.
I love that. I run to my office in the morning too. It's the first place I go.
Yeah.
I love coming in here. I love just getting to work. It feels weird if I throw
Yeah.
that off and I don't do it. So I love that. Just being really aligned. I never took a minute to think about that, but that was pretty cool that you just shared that. So your
Yeah.
website is packed with information. There's so
Yes.
much free resources on your website. And I want to talk because you have something kind of cool that we can do right now on your website. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. So my website is money-essentials.com. And what I found, we have so many freebies from, how to get started in real estate, how to invest in the stock market, how to reach financial freedom, really all kinds of amazing topics. And I found that folks were downloading quite a few different things, but also getting a little lost in how much we have available. So right now on the website at the very top, I believe it says your journey starts here. If you click that button, it will actually take you to a mini quiz. You let us know what you want to achieve in your business, your finance, and your career, and we will send you a customized bundle of all of those resources. So I think it's just one way I can hopefully make the process a little simpler for folks, get you exactly what you need. And then also, we have a whole directory of coaches that I'm building out right now. So we have career coaches, business coaches, finance coaches that we can connect you with. So, yeah, super easy. Fill out like a 2-minute quiz, and we just send you a bunch of stuff for free. So it's a no brainer.
I love it. I love it. Annie, thank you so much for coming on today. This was had so much great information and I love the idea of the bundle on your website. I think that is just
Yeah.
genius to do something like that. So it's just really tailored just to me and what I need and
Yeah.
what I'm looking for. So very, very cool. But thank you for coming on today and sharing everything with my listeners and myself.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. It was tons of fun. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. You're welcome. All right, everybody. We'll see you next week.